Now let's talk more about how to move by talking about the range of motion you should be going through. Range of motion, or ROM, refers to how much of a movement or range of motion you are going through in your exercise from the very bottom to the very top. Full range of motion means that you are taking the movement of the exercise as far in each direction as possible, from full joint extension to full muscle contraction. Now, some people, like certain weightlifters, see a problem with this, as usually going to the very top and bottom of an exercise means experiencing a point of rest at one of these positions, which many advanced and intensive lifters do not want their muscles to have. These types of people will say that full range of motion does not have to include the very top or bottom, but that if you are going to the precipice of it, that's good enough. However, there's also many lifters like me who, when going heavy and to failure, will need that moment of rest. Otherwise, you won't be able to do many reps before your muscles get exhausted. So the range of motion that you go through really depends on the exercise, the load, and the technique you're using and your personal preferences. Now, anything much less than the full range of motion is called a partial. This is done for the purpose of only doing the part of the motion that is most beneficial and cutting out the other parts, like the lockout, and maintaining constant tension on the muscle and maximizing time under tension. An example of a partial that is generally better than the full range of motion is in the case of the squat. The best low point to go to on the squat is when your thighs are parallel to the floor, or about parallel, okay? Anything below that is starting to round the lower back, as I said, and put the hips into a bad position. That is doing more harm than good for most people. And of course, some people may not feel the need to get that moment's rest at the very top of the exercise either, and may stop before the lockout, where your joints lock out and the load is no longer supported by muscle tension, but is resting entirely on your bones, okay? So partial squats are a good range of motion to do for that exercise, and there's some other exercises like that where partials may be better. And with some of these partial movements, you will see people doing them fast, which is completely the opposite of how I taught you to do almost all the exercises I taught in the last phase, where I taught you to do a slow, full range of motion. All right, so there are some exceptions. However, there's a lot of exercises where doing a slow, full range of motion with a moment's pause at the top and the bottom is what is best. And this could be due to different muscles being made up of fast or slow twitch fibers primarily. This could just be due to the need for variety and muscle confusion. But while there may be some exceptions, and sometimes you may want to do fast partials, in the debate between full versus partial range of motion, full range of motion is generally better. And I say this because the science is definitively in on that matter, which has shown that for the most part, full range of motion is better, except for some marginal exceptions. So there are 6 studies out on range of motion, and 5 of them show that full range of motion is better, even if it means using less weight. All right, there's only one study done in 2017 called Partial Range of Motion Exercise is Effective for Facilitating Muscle Hypertrophy and Function Through Sustained Intramuscular Hypoxia in Young Trained Men. And this was done by Masahiro Goto and colleagues, and showed that with the exercise skull crushers, a half range of motion caused almost twice the gains over an 8-week period due to constant tension. However, as I said, this is currently the only study on range of motion which shows this conclusion, okay? The 5 other studies out on range of motion show that full ROM is better, even with less weight. This is almost certainly due to the exercise selection used for this partial range of motion study, since it is a free weight exercise that follows a curve and thus has a poor resistance curve where there will be no tension at the top or bottom of the exercise where you are getting locked out. All right, so of course that exercise could really benefit from having a partial range of motion. But the other 5 studies out on range of motion all show that full ROM is better, even with less weight. Okay, so for any other type of exercise besides those done with free weights, following a curved path with a poor resistance curve, a full range of motion means maximizing the distance that the weight must travel, and thus the work that your muscles are doing, whereas less range of motion means less work is being done. So for all other types of exercises, full range of motion is what is optimal, as long as you are not allowing for too much rest between reps anytime you lock out and tension is lost. Though sometimes even that moment of rest can be beneficial, as it can allow you to do more reps and thus more work, as with a rest pause set. All right, so I've found that on exercises where I'm doing a really heavy weight or a really high number of reps, or where the exercise is extremely difficult if it weren't for that brief pause between reps, I wouldn't be able to do very much work at all. And so in the way of proof that full range of motion is generally better, in a 2020 meta-analysis of these 6 studies on range of motion, published by Dr. Brad Schoenfeld, PhD, and Jozo Grigic, titled Effects of Range of Motion on Muscle Development During Resistance Training Interventions, a Systematic Review. It analyzed all 6 of these studies that we currently have on ROM, and all 4 of the studies that were done on lower body exercises showed that a full ROM is better, whereas of the 2 upper body studies published, only 1 showed partial ROM being better, as I previously noted, and 1 showed no difference between the 2, which was with bicep curls. So these findings with the lower body are probably due to the fact that the lower body never really trains with a curved path using free weight exercises that have a poor resistance curve. So in conclusion, unless you have mobility issues, for the most part you should be using a full range of motion with a good squeeze and contraction at the top and a good stretch at the bottom, except in cases of there being a curved path with free weights, thus having a poor resistance curve, or exercises that have a lockout that you may not really need, okay? Only in these cases do partials have a useful place in training.